going guys, Kris here, and today we're going to be looking at the Gewehr M95 30 in Battlefield 5, a German bolt-action rifle that can be unlocked at Recon Rank 6. So the Gewehr M95 is a gun that you might be quite familiar with if you play Battlefield 1, because its origins date back to before the First World War, being designed and serviced in 1895. It was a really unique rifle for its time with a revolutionary design, using a straight pull bolt action instead of the more common rotating bolt handles, allowing the gun to be fired quite quickly and easily with a simple back and forth movement of its bolts. Not to mention that it was also fed using 5-round M-block clips too, as opposed to the typical stripper clips. But this also meant that the gun's mag wasn't designed to be topped up with individual bullets either, with empty clips just simply dropping out of the bottom of the gun's receiver from gravity. The M95 was the standard bolt-action rifle for the Austro-Hungarian army during World War I, and it was manufactured in large numbers, retaining with both the Austrian and Hungarian armies after the war came to an end. But the M95 30 variant that we've got our hands on in Battlefield 5 was actually a later conversion model, rechambered to fire the stronger 8.56mm Spitzer round, one that had a pointed tip for less drag and better overall accuracy at range. It was in service with the Austrian Republic until 1938 when Austria was annexed by Germany, which led to most of the rifles being put into storage, though these said rifles would later be reissued to second-line troops and other units later on in the war, due to the lack of available weaponry around at the time. Taking a look at all the Battlefield 5 stats next, the Gewehr M95 30 actually dishes out some of the highest amounts of damage in the class, with it maxing out at 80 for a body shot up to the range of 30 meters. But then less from here as your bullet travels further over distance, dropping down to the gun's minimum damage of 66 from 60 meters and beyond, which is actually the same damage profile as the Arasaka Type 99, having a tiny bit more short range power than the Kar98K. This pretty much gives it the strongest figures of all the bolt action rifles, but it's not really going to impact too much, with it still typically taking 2 shots to kill most enemies, unless you manage to hit them in the head of course. This slightly stronger power just means that the gun's more capable of finishing off already weakened targets with just one bullet a little bit more reliably, especially within earlier distances, with the damage being so high here. Having a fire rate of 58 RPM gives the rifle some reasonable kill times, though it's still beaten by the likes of the Lee Enfield and Ross Mark III, kinda being just slightly above average. Though this fire rate, just like with pretty much all the other rifles, can be increased with the machine bolt specialization, boosting it up to a much more impressive 74 RPM, which actually beats the Lee Enfield in its base form, giving it a good degree of both power and speed. Just like with the other bolt-action rifles, the M95 30's recoil pattern isn't really all that important, as unlike the rifle's Battlefield 1 counterpart, you'll still need to unscope to cycle the bolt anyway, regardless of it being a straight pull bolt weapon. It kicks upwards with a value of 3.2 and horizontally with values of 0.1. Nothing really to impact the gun's performance as you play though its bullet speed, which is going to do that, is sort of set in the middle of the pack, being one of the several rifles to fire its bullets at the speed of 750 meters per second. This is better than the Lee Enfield, with its slower bullets, being a gun more optimised for shorter sight lines, but not quite as high as the Kar98K or Krag Jorgensen, possibly making those guns slightly easier to use over longer ranges than the Gewehr M95 30, which should be fine enough over medium distances, though you might have to lead a target's movements a little bit more if they're running around far away, possibly making them harder to hit, especially if they're dashing off to cover and moving around in an unpredictable pattern, trying to avoid your bullets that you send in their direction. This muzzle velocity can't be boosted either like with some of the other rifles, though in most gunfights it should be fine enough to get the job done. Just don't expect it to be quite as effective as the Kar98K when going for those cross-map kills. With a 5-round ammo capacity, the Gewehr M95 30 doesn't exactly have loads of ammo at its disposal, with that being the standard amount for a lot of weapons in the class. It's enough to take on a few enemies at a time, especially with that higher damage often translating over to more one-hit kills due to those enemies already being wounded, though it won't keep you going for quite as long as the likes of the Lee Enfield, perhaps limiting its use for aggressive play in comparison, despite the M95 having more close range power. However, this is slightly offset by the gun's reloads, as because you'll always have to perform a clip reload without having to fumble around with individual cartridges, topping that magazine up, this actually gives you slightly faster reloads than average in most situations, which are also going to feel more consistent due to them being practically the same every time. a tactical reload is only 3 seconds, which might be a tiny bit slower than a few of the others if you're reloading after firing just one shot, but it's always going to be 3 seconds, even if you fired off more. If you empty the clip and shoot off that 5th bullet, well, it's only going to take 3.2 seconds to slot another one in, which is a fair bit quicker than the other rifles, and if you choose to run the quick reload spec, you can lower these times down even more, making it one of the most reliable recon rifles, despite only having that 5-round capacity. As far as the specializations go, I'd probably opt to start off with quick aim at the top, just to boost the aim down sight speed a bit, which will probably come in more useful than quick reload, with those reloads already being quite snappy as they are. The custom and light and stock options in the middle left are going to help with maneuverability by increasing movement speed while aiming and lowering spread. Though running down the right side, which is what I prefer doing, is going to increase sidearm and gadget switch out speeds, and it'll also ramp up the gun's fire rate to a much more impressive 74 RPM, complementing quick aim in the first section, giving the rifle quicker 2-hit kill times and letting you reacquire targets easier after missed shots. A pretty good combination to make the gun slightly more aggressive too, while taking better advantage of that higher close to mid-range damage. And last of all, we've got the bayonet and variable zoom specs at the very bottom, both pretty situational options to pick from. I'll leave this one up to you guys, as you might want to use the bayonet as a close range panic option if someone gets a bit too close for comfort, though variable zoom's probably going to be a bit more beneficial for long range sniping, especially if you have trouble with bullet drop over those extreme distances. Though this is often easily countered by just aiming a little bit higher, but if you're taking on a row of snipers set back far into the distance, then using variable zoom might make life a little bit easier if you're using a rifle with a scope. So in conclusion, the Gewehr M95 30 plays out in a slightly different way to its Battlefield 1 counterpart, generally being a bit less aggressive, but still quite versatile over pretty much any range. It kind of acts like a good all-rounder for the recon class's bolt-action rifles, having a bunch of balanced middle ground stats to make it useful in several different situations, whether it be for popping off helmets over long distances and sniping players across the map, or getting a bit more stuck into the action and forcing your way closer to the front. Its fire rate is reasonable, though not quite as competitive as some of the others, though its higher power per shot can often knock players down a bit easier in just one bullet, especially with a lot of players on Battlefield 5 having less health due to the way the health regen system works, only going up a certain amount without the assistance of medpacks and crates. Combine all this with those generally quick and consistent M-block clip reloads, gives you a weapon that can still perform fairly well under pressure, often dependable for getting you through a lot of fights while not really catering to a specific range or playstyle, as much as a lot of the other rifles do. And in a way, this sort of makes it a jack of all trades, master of none, which isn't necessarily a bad thing for this gun, as it often allows it to adapt to different situations slightly better and gives it a bit more flexibility without any major drawbacks. Anyway, that's just about it for this one guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Give me a thumbs up if you did, and subscribe for more Battlefield guides and other content right here on my channel. Take it easy, and I'll be seeing you in that next one.